Welcome to the UnTold Truth by Joshua Brinkley, a journey through life, resilience, and the power of the mind. My name is Joshua Brinkley, and for the first time, I'm pulling back the curtain on the experiences that have shaped me. From my childhood in Richmond, to navigating middle school and high school, to the adversity that built the man who I am today. On this podcast, we're diving into the story behind the story. You'll hear about my early years, the challenges I faced growing up, and the moments that test my character long before adulthood ever did. We'll talk about my basketball career, the passion, the discipline, the setbacks, and the lessons that the game taught me that I still carry to this very day. And then we'll go deeper. We'll explore psychology, how the mind can work for you or against you, how our thoughts can shape our reality, how trauma, pressure, and self-doubt can hold us back, and how we can rewire ourselves to break through. I'll share real moments, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Times when life wasn't pretty, times when I struggled, times when I made mistakes and had to rebuild. From my short stint of incarceration, to fighting through a misdemeanor charge, to learning who I was and who I wanted to become. And we won't stop there. We'll talk about becoming a business owner, building Richmond Therapeutic Health Services Incorporation, and the trials, failures, and victories that came with entrepreneurship. I'll share the strategies, the mindset, and the gritty reality behind building something from the ground up. This podcast is more than my biography. It's a blueprint. Every story, lesson, and reflection is designed to help someone else. Someone facing adversity, someone trying to find purpose, someone rebuilding, someone chasing greatness but battling the weight of life at the same time. If you've ever faced hardship, if you've ever fallen and had to get back up, if you want to understand your mind and unlock the strongest version of yourself, then you're in the right place. This is my story, but more importantly, this is the story that might change yours. Welcome to the UnTold Truth by Joshua Brinkley. Let's get started. Welcome back to the UnTold Truth by Joshua Brinkley. In episode 3, I talked about the reality of college, the pressure, the academic grind, the culture shock, the injuries, and the expectations that shaped me into a young man. I share how I struggled with school, how I almost failed out, how head coach Monte Ross lit a fire under me, and how I became a 4-year starter at the University of Delaware. I talked about temptation, partying, my first experience with drugs and alcohol, and the ways I mishandled relationships because I was trying to figure out who I was. And episode 3 ended with the version of me standing on the edge of adulthood, diploma in hand, basketball career behind me, and no clear map of what came next. That brings us here to episode 4, where the jersey comes off and real life begins. One of the hardest transitions a true athlete will ever face is the moment the game stops. Because for 4 years, basketball gave me identity, structure, purpose, and discipline. But when college ended, all of that disappeared overnight. No more practices, no more coaches, no more workouts you had to show up for, no more games, no more attention, and no more crowd. For the first time in my life, I was just Josh, a regular guy in the real world, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. I could have pursued a pro career. In fact, I had multiple potential contracts to do so. One of them I recall was to go play in Luxembourg, Europe. But deep down inside, I knew something. I knew basketball could only take me so far. I didn't walk away from the game because I wasn't good enough. I walked away because life was calling me in another direction. There was another moment, a moment that almost destroyed everything before my adult life even began. A moment that tested my character, my strength, and my ability to start over. And that moment happened at Douglas Freeman High School. After graduating from the University of Delaware, I needed to find work. Like most 22-year-olds, I was confused, broke, hopeful, and trying to figure out my next steps. All of this was new to me. I reconnected with a friend from high school. His name is Matthew Canfield. He didn't go to Freeman, but his mother, Miss Canfield, she taught at Freeman. And we became friends from being in the community, connecting with basketball, and understanding that we were both two young guys trying to make something shake in our early 20s. He's now a successful music producer, living in California, who has made beats for music artists such as Stacey Ryan, Lil Wayne, and Kalani. However, at the time, he was working at Freeman with the intellectually disabled population. He said, "Josh, come work here. It's part-time, and you be great with the kids." So I did. And honestly, I love the kids. They loved me. I was young, energetic, helpful, and I built real relationships with them. At that time in 2013, group chats were blowing up, and memes, they were the new wave. Memes were everywhere. Everyone was taking selfies. It was a new era of internet humor. So me, Matt, and another coworker, all around the same age, created a group chat just to communicate. We communicated about what classes we were in, who needed help, when classes switched, coordinating breaks, etc. It started professional, then it became friendly, then funny, and then casual. Memes turned into jokes, jokes turned into selfies. Some selfies included students smiling next to us, purely innocent moments of us supporting them. Then came the mistake. One day, I took a selfie in the bathroom, which we now know that is strictly prohibited. Behind me, it was an 18-year-old intellectually disabled student. He required a wheelchair and could not physically speak. We were required to change him because he could not physically do it himself. 2 staff members had to be present while changing him at all times. He appeared in the background of the photo. He wasn't naked. He wasn't being exploited. His pants were slightly lowered because we had to change him due to his condition. He had no shirt on, which is not uncommon in ID programs where students often need extra help. There was no sexual intent, no predatory behavior, no malicious action. It was simply wrong place, wrong time, wrong context. Simply a young adult mistake. Another staff member noticed that we were laughing a lot during work. He asked what was so funny. Trying to be friendly, trying to include him, trying to make him feel part of the group, I made the mistake of inviting him into the chat. What was meant for inclusion turned into confusion, misunderstanding, and ultimately betrayal. A few days later, I was called into the front office. No warning, no explanations, just, "Hey Josh, we need to ask you about a photo of a student." I was confused, shocked, and blindsided. Before I could fully explain myself, the police walked in. And next thing I knew, I was in handcuffs. The next day, my face was on the news, both in Delaware and Virginia. Not the sports section, not the local star returning home story, not the former Division I athlete gives back to kids. No, the media ran with the most extreme angle possible. Former student assistant arrested for inappropriate photo. People who didn't know me, people who didn't wait for details, they instantly engaged into calling me a pedophile, a predator, and a monster. The media was so overbearing. They were at my mother's house, where I resided, waiting for me or her to walk out just to ask us questions. One day, my mother told me, "Josh, this is too much. You have 2 options. You can either stay here, find a job and pay some bills, or face this turmoil and leave and figure it out." So I left. In my mind, I thought my mom had given up on me. She was showing me tough love, and I needed that. So for the next 3 months, I couch surfed and I lived out of my car. Those were some hard times. I eventually found a job at a moving company and another company called Game Truck. My day-to-day schedule was hectic. It started off at Gold's Gym at 4 a.m. in the morning. Then I would shower, go to work all day, and rinse and repeat. But the truth was simple. I never touched a child. I never harmed a child. The student wasn't naked, and there was no sexual content. It was a mistake, not a crime. Even the student's parents never pressed charges. But the damage, the humiliation, the fear, the labels, the headlines, those didn't disappear. Anyone that truly knows me knows that I'm one of the straightest men you'll ever meet. And if people knew what happened to me as a minor, they would know I would never do anything of that nature and would have had a little bit more sympathy for me. At the time, Freeman's ID program was under serious scrutiny. Multiple incidents, multiple complaints, multiple issues. They needed an example. I wasn't the problem, but I became the scapegoat. In 2023, I started going to the Douglas Freeman basketball games purposely to help me get over what occurred back in 2013 and to show them that whatever they tried to do to me, I was unfazed. Unfazed by their attempt to discredit everything I did for that damn school in relation to basketball. I believe that I should be in the Hall of Fame already, but we all know how politics run this world, especially at a school that had a mascot as a rebel and had Confederate flags on campus in the 90s. For those who don't know how that relates, a rebel is a person who is part of a rebellion. And the term rebel was a nickname given to Confederates by the Union during the Civil War to describe their fight against the U.S. government. And of course, most folk from that school would say, it doesn't relate. So my question would be, so why is it allowed to have Confederate flags on campus? But anyways, that's a whole nother conversation. But it's a reason as to why they made them change their name. Instead of being called the Rebels, now they're called the Mavericks. Those who were there to see me in real time as a basketball player for that school, they know they're doing me dirty. And that's fine, because I can sleep good at night knowing the untold truth. Back in 2015, after about a year and a half had passed of consistent struggling financially, there was a man that took a chance on me. His name is Demario Atkins. He's the owner of Behavioral Health Services of Virginia. He didn't judge me. He didn't listen to the rumors. He listened to the truth. He saw my character and he gave me a job. And that job, that was the spark that eventually led me to my career in mental health, my transformation as a professional, and the founding of Richmond Therapeutic Health Services later on. The fall at Freeman set the stage for the rise of business. So Douglas Freeman, I would like to express my gratitude and personally thank you for everything you have done for me. When you grow up being the athlete, when coaches, classmates, teammates, fans, and your whole world sees you as a basketball player, losing the game feels like losing yourself. I struggled with that badly. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what my purpose was. I didn't know what direction I wanted to go. It felt like the world was continuing and I was stuck behind, just watching. That identity crisis shaped a lot of the decisions I made in my 20s. Some good, some terrible. Some that cost me relationships and almost cost me myself. One of the biggest parts of my 20s was my relationship with my ex-wife, Danija Novakovic. She played volleyball at VCU and was born and raised in Croatia. Our relationship was real. It was passionate and it was deep. But it was also complicated. She was here on a student visa, and me, nor her, wanted her to leave to go back home. Her visa had expired. Therefore, we got married right down at the course in Henrico, Virginia. As time passed, issues that we did not think about as young adults started to arise. We came from two completely different worlds, different cultures, different expectations, different ways of communicating, and different definitions of family roles. And early in the marriage, especially in your 20s, those differences don't blend easily. They collide. At one point, I allowed family members to move into our home. I thought I was helping. I thought I was doing the right thing. But it created pressure, it created tension, and it created resentment. And then, to add salt to the wound, there's also something deeply personal I want to acknowledge, because it played a major role in where our relationship eventually went. Danija was pregnant, with twins, and miscarried both babies. That loss was heavy. It changed us individually, and it changed the dynamic of our relationship. Grief has a way of doing that. It wasn't something we were fully equipped to process at the time, and it left an impact that stayed with us long after. And then, fast forward into 2020, COVID happened. COVID made everything worse, just like it did for so many couples. We were stuck inside, no space, and no escape from each other. And during that time, I fell back into a dark space. I started using cocaine again. What had once been an experiment in college became a coping mechanism in my late 20s. I started using it consistently, to the point where it changed my behavior. I started staying out all night, didn't come home, and didn't communicate. I wasn't myself. I wasn't healthy, and I wasn't treating her the way she deserved to be treated. That period marked the unraveling of our marriage, and it marked the unraveling of who I thought I was. But sometimes, hitting rock bottom is the only way you can find the foundation you're meant to build on. During my 20s, I was still somewhat involved in basketball. I was eventually asked to play for an ABA team here in Richmond. Even though I chose not to go play overseas, I wasn't ready to retire yet. I still needed basketball, not as a career, but as an outlet. So I joined the Richmond Elite ABA basketball team after taking off of basketball for about a year. I played for Richmond Elite for 5 years. It wasn't the NCAA, it wasn't Europe, it wasn't the NBA, but it brought back something I had lost: passion, community, drive, and belonging. It reminded me that basketball wasn't just part of my past, it was part of my healing. During my time with Richmond Elite, I was pretty dominant. I was ranked amongst the top big men in the ABA. Believe it or not, Richmond Elite continued to help me transition from an athlete to an adult, from player to leader, from loss to focus, and from broken to rebuilding. And as my basketball career slowly wound down, my entrepreneurial spirit woke up. This is where the seeds of my future were planted. The seeds of business ownership, self-awareness, and purpose. Around 2017, while I was still playing for Richmond Elite in the ABA, I created an LLC with another business partner, an AAU organization called Tri-City Arsenal. We started it because we wanted to give back to the community. We wanted to help kids in the Richmond, Henrico, and Tri-City areas, the same way coaches helped shape us. But starting this program was harder for me than anyone realized, because after the false accusations and the media slander from Douglas Freeman, I was scared to work with kids. My business partner, Jeremy Eppiheimer, he also had some concerns. But something unexpected happened. Parents showed up, kids showed up, the community showed up. Because people who actually knew me, people who sat with me, people who spoke with me, people who looked me in my eyes, they understood the truth. I wasn't the monster headlines made me out to be. I wasn't the accusations. I wasn't the false narratives. I wasn't the mistake. I was a young black man who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and whose life had been blown out of proportion by a school system already under scrutiny for their handling of ID students. And the Richmond community, they saw through it. So much so that the Richmond Times-Dispatch wrote an article about the formation and the growth of Tri-City Arsenal. In our first year, we had 3 teams, kids from all backgrounds, all skill levels, and all stories. By the second year, despite COVID cutting everything short, Tri-City Arsenal grew to 12 teams, dozens of families, hundreds of kids wanting to play for our program. Not because we were some big organization, not because we had money, not because we had sponsors, but because parents believed in us. They believed in me. They saw a young man who cared about their kids. They saw a young man who valued character just as much as basketball. They saw a young man who taught student athletes, not just athletes. So for me, Tri-City Arsenal wasn't just an AAU program. It was continued healing. It was redemption. It was proof that I wasn't who Freeman tried to paint me as. It was full circle. When COVID hit and the second year ended abruptly, the gym shut down, the city shut down. Life froze. Tri-City Arsenal never fully recovered from that. But what it represented, what it meant to those kids, what it meant to me, that stays forever. Episode 4 is the turning point, where the game ends, but life begins. It's about finding yourself, surviving heartbreak, rebuilding discipline, finding direction, and stepping into adulthood. It was messy, it was painful, but it was honest and it was real. And it's part of my untold truth. In episode 5, this is where the story shifts again. Not through basketball, not through relationships, not through school, but through life hitting back. This next chapter is about the fall and the rise. It's where I confront the truth about my addiction, not just the first time I tried cocaine, but the moment it came a crush, and the moment I lost one of my best friends. Episode 5 is where I open up about what it means to lose yourself as a human being. But episode 5 is not just about destruction, it's about resurrection. Episode 5 is where I start building the next version of myself. The man who becomes a business owner, a leader in mental health, and a mentor. And this is where the untold truth becomes the comeback story.